So thanks so much for inviting me as a discussion. I'd like to thank you, the conference organizer, Catherine and Ross, not just for the great program for this year. I was checking about the past year program. I see a lot of fantastic papers. And also I met Alex a couple of times. I was surprised yesterday because I read Alex several papers on GPT, and I saw him at different conferences, and I asked him when you're going to on the market. He said he's only second year student, PhD student. So it's a lot of amazing thing has done. And also I want to give credit for my PhD students on my PhD seminar. I actually include this paper in my PhD seminar and trying to get more comments for Alex. And one thing I noticed that maybe the job market is tough. A lot of PhD students trying to be very critical and sometimes negative. So the way I instruct them is I want them to be constructive, provide comments which can helpful for the authors. And yeah, that's kind of summary I'd like to start. So very brief summary of this paper. So basically 4 big points. How exactly GPT can help investors? They kind of summarize the context and provide more valuable information. And then one creative thing they did is they use the original text minus GPT summary. So the difference, they call it a bloat, which will proxy the managerial distortion in the disclosure. So basically, sometimes manager maybe want to hide the information, so they inject some noise information and to kind of distract investors. And then they validate the measure to show the capital market consequence, and this is something they did a lot on this. And then and the first one is they show another use case of GPT. So GPT can use to calculate ESG and other stuff. This is just 1 or 2 examples. The case they show is they can use these to calculate millions of variables, not just ESG. It's just one example to demonstrate the use case of GPT. So a lot of things I like the paper. It's a very trendy topics. It's, we care about this, and a lot of efforts from authors. They use different models, robust this text. And also you can see that if you see the acknowledgement, there's a lot of prestigious conference they discussed, including this one. Yeah, including this one. And so what I'm trying to do is provide comments different from other discussion. I do see this paper in the previous conference. I see the paper has changed a lot, incorporate a lot of comments from the 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years ago conference I observed. So I'm trying to provide something new, and also take some comments from the PhD students we discussed in the PhD seminar. So this flow I want to do is I'm not going to raise 4 comments, which I may think something authors can improve. And I'm not just going to stop there. I have 8 suggestions which may help the authors to address the comments I raised. So like I said, like I told my PhD students, we want to be constructive, and we want to recognize something we can improve, and also trying to provide some comments may be helpful for the authors. So the first one is the one of the 4 comments I have is, what is GPT summary? What the paper claim is, what the authors claim is, this is a large language model. The summary is more informative. So basically, the summary captures the true information, and then they trying to validate this. So as academia, as a students, PhD students in the seminar, they always have alternatives, right? So yes, it might be true information, it might be something else. So what exactly is GPT summary capture? So what the authors did is they used the sentiment to validate the information content of the GPT summary. So basically they show is if original text is positive, and the GPT summary will be more positive. If original summary is negative, then GPT will be more negative. So that shows that GPT summary is more informative and contain more information. This is one of the validation tests. They have more, but I just want to pick up this validation test just to discuss. I'm sure you guys use a lot of GPT, and you can see that GPT has the tendency to use a lot of adjectives. So adjectives. So basically, if I write some email, ask GPT to write. GPT normally make my email looks very flashing, like, oh, it's human being, excellent, magnificent. Like GPT use a lot of these kind of adjectives when they summarize my emails and stuff. So So the question I have is, when you see more sentiment, more negative, positive words, is that really represent true information, or is just nature of the GPT? So maybe some background. How is GPT trained? So GPT 1.0, 2.0 is purely self-supervised. There's no human engaged. Start from GPT 3.0, they start to recruit people from India and Philippines. They're using human labor to instruct the GPT, to make GPT to mimic the human intelligence. And then in the later stage, they use the reinforced learning to further improve GPT. So GPT training has a lot of human input. So another word is the reason we see a lot of adjective words is possibly because the human average English writers use a lot of adjective words. So that's why this kind of habits translated to GPT. And then I don't want to talk too much. What's the solution here? I will talk more. But the one way is we can have a human, like what people like the OpenAI train GPT. They can have a human to validate this kind of summary, whether it contains new information. I shamelessly want to say I have a new textbook on this. It's free to everyone. You can download from my website. I kind of tell how exactly we can fine-tune a GPT, how to validate. So I'm going to save my time here, but this is something we can do to validate whether the summary contains new information. Another point I really want to raise is what is bloated. So first I want to talk about the GPT summary and the bloated. What is bloated is the original text minus GPT summary. That's the bloated components. So what the author is trying to claim is the bloated one represent redundant information, noise information, is managerial distortion, like when they're trying to do disclosure. So let's think about it. So they use GPT 3.5 Turbo. So the difference between the two is the bloated. But if I use other model, if I fine-tune GPT, again, refer to my textbook, I show the step how to fine-tune GPT. If we fine-tune the GPT, the summary will be very different from the summary from the GPT 3.5 the authors use. They use different model as well. But what I'm talking about here is if the bloated information is really managerial distortion, and then this should be only related to manager decision. But if you change different model, you have different summary and you have different bloat. So basically what we're talking about is the increase or decrease of the bloated information supposed to be unrelated to the managerial decision. But in this case, it's actually the increase or decrease in the bloated information proxy managerial distortion. So should program manager really should it be responsible for the users using different models? So this is one thing I was wondering, what is exactly bloated information? So I think I agree with the authors. There's some bloated information, managerial distortion, but I think maybe there's some managerial distortion, maybe some like model difference, maybe some others. The multiple components actually attribute to the bloated information. I think the authors trying to claim the bloated information is about managerial distortion. I buy that. I think that's one of the components, but then maybe some other components we can discuss. So for example, you can see the huge change in the GPT model. So you can see the training sample and the parameters. There's a significant change on all these models. I didn't use the new one because this is some pictures I used in my PhD a long time ago. So you can see that if you use different models, there will be huge change in the summary and a huge change in the bloated information. Is that really related to the managerial distortion? And also, if you fine tune this, and you also get different results. So I know I'm standing at SEC. One thing I think the paper trying to make a policy implication for the SEC, which I really like it. But I think it's critical to make the measure, the validation solid. So I have friends work for SEC. I never work for SEC, so no one has invited me. So I didn't work for SEC. But my friends told me, what you guys do is you have two independent individuals to work on the policy, and then you guys cross-checking the coding and the results. That's all I was told. I don't know if that's what you guys are doing. So what the message sent to me is, in order to make policy information, the message has to be solid, the measure has to be validated. So I think this is one thing the author can do. Normally, what I see is measurement paper really get a high citation. Now, wherever you get a measurement paper, you have high citation, high impact. But the barrier is we have to convince, and the validation has to be convincing in order to achieve that the final citation and impact. So the third comment I want to do is, do GPT use additional information? This is something Alex already talked about. So what does that mean is GPT was trained on numerous data, numerous training sample. So when GPT do the summary, compared to original text, is that fair comparison? Because GPT not just reading the original text, they're also training on something else. So let me give you two scenarios to understand what is going on. So let's say a student, supposed to be GPT. The student take a millions of exam, and then after the training, they take a new exam without additional notes. So this is scenario one. Scenario two is the students training on the GPT, training on the exams, train the students, and take the exam with the new notes. So basically, they are trained, and also they are going to take a exam with new notes. So what the paper read out is the scenario two. So basically, they ask GPT to take the new exam without additional notes. But the problem is the GPT already trained on the millions of training samples. So I don't have time to go over the back propagation. I was going to go over a little bit back propagation to understand what is going on. But the intuitive idea is the training sample was already embedded in the parameters. So basically, the students, once the students finish the millions of exams, they already have the knowledge of the exams. And in the GPT setting, the knowledge is embedded in the parameters. So basically, when the authors they don't use additional information, but the parameters already contain the past information about the training sample. So I don't think this is a concern, but I do see some of the comments raised in the previous conference. The authors trying to address. And another point I want to raise, how do investors use GPT? So the whole point of the paper is the GPT can help investors to summarize, but a lot of the results actually is concentrated before the GPT period. So GPT is launched in March 2022. But most of the findings here is before GPT summary. So I was wondering, before the GPT period, the investor do not have access to GPT summary. So how exactly the investor can use GPT to trade on this? So there's something I think the authors can do more writing or do some test. So basically, my conjecture is before the GPT launch, there will be less impact of the GPT summary on the capital market. After launch of the GPT summary, the investors start to use GPT, so you will see more impact. So these are the four things I want to raise. And I know nothing is perfect, and I think the four comments I raised, I do want to provide some suggestions I had. Something may help, something may not. So one thing I want to just relate to earlier comments, we can use GPT as a shock. So you can see that whether the use of the GPT can have a more impact on the capital market. So this is a very natural test the authors can check. Another thing is you can see that earlier comments, a lot of comments relate to the validation of the measure, the bloated. So how the authors validate bloated? They use the liquidity information, the bid-ask spread, some liquidity measure to measure to validate the bloated. Another way they can do is they can use market reaction to see the market reaction to the bloated information. So if the bloated is really redundant information, we shouldn't see market reaction. Otherwise, you will see different case. Another potential way I will suggest is maybe there's a new contribution. If the bloated information is redundant, but if investors do not get it, we will see a reversal. So basically, you can see that maybe the investors do not know the bloated information is redundant. Maybe you can see that the market at the contemporaneous window, investors react to bloated information, and then they realize this is redundant information. There will be a reversal. If the authors can see that, I think that's a huge contribution. They are not just suggesting the GPT is useful. They are suggesting they create a measure, bloated measure, which is not actually used by investors. They are suggesting investors to use if they see the reversal. I don't know the results. And also, I have 2 minutes left. So what are the quick fix? Sometimes, I know some discussion trying to provide a laundry list for authors to do. Sometimes I don't want to do that. But what's something we can do quickly? So you see they have 4 questions. 2 questions related to bloated information. I would think the question 1 and question 4 is solid. I don't have anything about that. But the 2 and 3, they have to do more validation on this. I think a quick fix is just drop the 2 and 3, focus on the 1 and 4, and the paper is complete. I don't think the contribution has any problem, and depends on the author's preference. And also, shamelessly mentioned about some of my other paper. So my other paper, I show that with the rise of Google Bird, corporate manager trying to cater to Google Bird, the same logic can apply here. With the rise of GPT, do corporate managers actually trying to cater to GPT as well. So if that's the case, I will see like less bloated information in recent years, because with the rise of GPT, managers will know they are more likely to be detected by bloating the information. But actually they see the increase in bloated information. I think it's interesting. I think there has more room for them to examine why sometimes it's increased, why is it decrease. If manager really want to, cater to GPT, they maybe want to decrease bloated information, but we see the increase. So a lot of good things they can talk about. And for the sake of time, I just want to very quickly summarize the rest of the points. They can break down the information into summary and forward-looking, because forward-looking information is less subject to legal liability. So they should see more bloated information for forward-looking. And also, everything here is rely on the sentiment. And the trend of the large language model is we have to focus on other features, like new features of text instead of sentiment. And also, for the title, instead of how can GPT help, they actually answer the question, how GPT help? So these are all good things. I think they can change. And the last comments, I'm on time for ending the presentation, is they use the word self-attention to cure limited attention. I just want to point out these are two different concepts. Limited attention is a human attention from the finance literature. Self-attention is from computer science literature. I was going to explain the mechanism of self-attention. Since I'm running out of time, you guys just see these are two different. The self-attention has nothing to do with human. It's about weights on each parameters on each features. So some writing can be helpful. So overall, I think I benefit a lot from reading the paper and also my PhD seminar. And I think the whole message is very clear. And hope the comments will be helpful. Thanks so much.